Welcome back, horror fans, to Real Talk Horror. I'm your host, Josh Bell, and if you're here, I know you're ready to dive headfirst into the darkest, creepiest, most twisted corners of the genre we all can't get enough of. Now, today's big episode is huge. This is the grand finale of what I'm calling Phase 1 of our John Carpenter retrospective. And trust me, Phase 1 is ending with a bang. Or maybe a blood-curdling scream, because today we're talking about none other than The Thing. Let me set the scene here for you. Released in 1982, The Thing is often hailed as one of the greatest horror films of all time, and for good reason. It's a story that grips you by the throat and refuses to let go. John Carpenter uses this film to plunge us into the frozen, desolate landscape of Antarctica, where a shape-shifting alien puts survival, trust, and even humanity itself to the test. We've got a lot of ground to cover while I explain why this is such a masterpiece. So what makes The Thing so iconic? For Carpenter, this wasn't just another notch on his belt. It was a game changer, a film that pushed practical effects to their limits, redefined the concept of suspense, and cemented Carpenter's legacy as a master of horror. But it's more than that. The Thing isn't just a film you watch, it's a film you feel. The isolation, the paranoia, the creeping dread, it all seeps under your skin and stays there. And here's the kicker. When The Thing first hit theaters, it wasn't the beloved classic we know today. It flopped hard. Critics panned it. Audiences were lukewarm, and Carpenter's career took a hit. But over time, this icy gem thawed its way into the hearts of horror fans, earning its rightful place as a genre-defining masterpiece. So buckle up. We're about to dive into one of the most chilling, mind-bending, and flat-out terrifying films ever made. Grab your flamethrowers and watch your back, because in the world of The Thing, trust is the scariest thing of all. Let me set the scene. It's the dead of winter in Antarctica, one of the most remote, desolate places on Earth. A group of American researchers, isolated at their snow-covered outposts, are going about their routine when chaos quite literally crashes into their lives. A helicopter from a nearby Norwegian base appears, frantically pursuing a dog across the tundra. What starts as a bizarre, inexplicable incident quickly escalates into a nightmare as they discover the Norwegians are dealing with something far more terrifying than anyone could have imagined. A shape-shifting alien capable of perfectly assimilating and imitating any living being. And this is where The Thing truly grabs hold. It's no longer just about survival, it's about trust, or the lack of trust. Who's still a human? Who's been taken over by the alien? What follows is a claustrophobic, desperate fight for survival as the group begins to fracture under the weight of paranoia, fear, and suspicion. Now let's talk themes, because this is where The Thing really gets its teeth into you. Paranoia is the name of the game here, and Carpenter doesn't just explore it, he weaponizes it. This film is about the fragility of trust and how quickly it can erode when survival is on the line. But it doesn't stop there. Carpenter raises deeper, more unsettling questions. What does it mean to be human? Are we defined by our physical form? Or is it our actions, our choices that truly matter? And if an alien can replicate us down to the last molecule, is there any meaningful difference between them and us? These are heavy existential questions, but Carpenter weaves them into the narrative seamlessly. It's a testament to how The Thing connects to his broader body of work, especially his recurring themes of societal decay and the fear of losing control to an unstoppable, larger force. Think about it, from the apocalyptic nihilism of Prince of Darkness to the unrelenting evil in Halloween, Carpenter loves exploring what happens when the systems we rely on crumble, and The Thing is one of the most masterful takes on that idea. Of course, a story like this needs a strong cast to anchor it. And boy, does The Thing deliver. Kurt Russell leads the charge as MacReady, the group's reluctant hero. With his rugged demeanor and take-no-nonsense attitude, Russell gives us a protagonist who's resourceful, determined, and just vulnerable enough to make him relatable. You feel his frustration, his exhaustion, and his simmering fear as he tries to keep things from completely unraveling. And then there's Childs, played by the ever-charismatic Keith David. Childs is bold, skeptical, and not afraid to challenge MacReady when tensions rise. Their dynamic, sometimes cooperative, sometimes antagonistic, is a key part of what makes the film so compelling. Every character, from the dog handler Clark to the quiet but enigmatic Blair, is written with just enough nuance to make you constantly question their motives. Is that unease in their eyes fear or something more sinister? It's the combination of tight storytelling, compelling characters, and razor-sharp themes that keeps The Thing feeling fresh and terrifying all these years later. And trust me, we're just getting started. All right, horror buffs, let's take a peek behind the curtain and talk about what went into bringing The Thing to life. With a $15 million budget, this was John Carpenter's most expensive film at the time. Practically blockbuster territory for a horror movie in 1982. And let me tell you, Carpenter put every cent of that budget to work. A huge chunk of it went into the film's jaw-dropping practical effects, courtesy of Rob Bottin. Now, Bottin was just 22 years old when he took on this Herculean task. And what he accomplished was nothing short of revolutionary. The grotesque, shape-shifting creatures he created weren't just terrifying, they were a technical marvel. Every gory detail, every oozing transformation was brought to life with animatronics, puppetry, and buckets of KY jelly. The scene where Nora's chest opens up into a gaping maw, or the infamous spider head, these are memories and moments burned into horror history, and they were all done without any CGI. But Bottin's commitment came at a cost, literally to his health. The guy worked so hard on this film, putting in 100-hour weeks, that he ended up hospitalized from exhaustion. Talk about suffering for your art. And it wasn't just Bottin pulling that double duty. Carpenter, as usual, was all hands on deck. He directed with laser focus, worked closely with Bottin to make sure that the effects fit seamlessly into the story, and even kept a watchful eye on the film's score. Now, speaking of the score, this is an interesting one. Carpenter is famous for composing his own music. But for The Thing, he collaborated with the legendary Ennio Morricone. Morricone's minimalist, synth-heavy compositions were a perfect match for Carpenter's vision. It's almost eerie how well they meshed. Morricone's haunting, throbbing themes feel like they were ripped straight out of Carpenter's playbook. The music sets the atmosphere of relentless dread that sticks with you, but the real kicker, despite all this effort, The Thing tanked at the box office. It grossed just $19.6 million, barely breaking even. And critics were brutal. Many dismissed it as overly gruesome, too bleak, and lacking the crowd-pleasing thrills of something like E.T., which, fun fact, came out just 2 weeks earlier. I mean, talk about tough competition. But what's wild is that the thing wasn't just a flop. It was a flop that nearly derailed Carpenter's career. He was devastated by the reception, and for years it seemed like this incredible film might fade away into obscurity. But, as we'll talk about later, time has been incredibly kind to the thing. What was once seen as too grotesque or too bleak is now celebrated as a masterpiece of horror, and that's a testament to everyone involved. From Botin's relentless creativity, to Carpenter's unwavering vision, to the performances of all involved. Sometimes greatness just needs time to be appreciated. Let's take a moment to appreciate the artistry John Carpenter brings to the thing. This isn't just a horror film. It's an amazing performance in tension, atmosphere, and storytelling. Carpenter's signature style is on full display, showing us why he's earned his place as one of the greatest horror directors of all time. First, let's talk about space and silence. Two tools Carpenter wields like a maestro conducting an orchestra. The remote Antarctic setting isn't just a location, it's a character in the story. It looms over every frame, amplifying the sense of isolation, vulnerability, and dread. There's no escape. The freezing, empty wilderness outside is just as hostile as the shape-shifting alien inside. Carpenter's ability to make the setting an integral part of the storytelling is genius. It's not just a backdrop, it's part of the tension. And the way he uses silence is pure brilliance. Carpenter understands that you don't have to hear it to be terrifying. Long stretches of quiet are punctuated by sudden, horrifying bursts of sound or violence, and it keeps us perpetually on edge. It's a rhythm that mirrors the paranoia of the characters themselves. Moments of uneasy calm shattered by chaos. Then there's the pacing. This is Carpenter at his best, taking the slow burn approach to storytelling and turning it into an art form. From the eerie, enigmatic opening scene of the dog running across the snow to the jaw-dropping, edge-of-your-seat climax, every moment is deliberate. Carpenter doesn't rush. He lets the tension simmer, building and building until it reaches a boiling point, and when it boils over, the results are explosive, literally and figuratively. And where he doesn't fail is that he holds that line just long enough, that slow burn, to any longer and it would take too long, any shorter and it wouldn't fully pay off. He has the timing exact. Now let's talk about the music. Yes, we've mentioned Morricone's score, but it's worth diving deeper into here. That two-note motif, it's like a heartbeat, subtle, constant, and unrelenting. It underscores the sense of dread, creating an atmosphere that's hypnotic and horrifying. Carpenter might not have composed the score himself this time, but you can feel his fingerprints all over it. Morricone's minimalist approach aligns perfectly with Carpenter's visual style, making the music an extension of the narrative. Speaking of visuals, Carpenter's cinematography choices are stunning. The tight framing, long takes, and use of close-ups create a claustrophobic intimacy that pulls you into the character's paranoia. His use of shadows and lighting is masterful. He doesn't just show you the horror, he makes you feel it lurking in every corner. The wide shots of the Antarctic landscape emphasize just how small and vulnerable these characters are, while the interior shots of the outpost make you feel trapped right there with them. And let's not forget how Carpenter subverts genre conventions. In many horror films, there's a clear distinction between the hero and the villain. But in The Thing, those lines are blurred to the point of non-existence. The alien isn't just an external threat. It's an invasive force that corrupts from within, making every character a potential enemy. Carpenter plays with this ambiguity masterfully, keeping us as uncertain and paranoid as the characters themselves. Every element, from the pacing to the visuals to the music, works together to create an experience that's more than just scary. This is deeply unsettling. Carpenter doesn't just show us horror, he makes us live it, one agonizing moment at a time. And that, my friends, is why The Thing is such a standout in his already stellar filmography. You know, it's wild to think about how The Thing was received back in 1982. You know, critics panning it, audience ignoring it, and it being deemed a box office failure. But when you fast forward a few decades and here we are celebrating it as one of the greatest horror films of all time, if that's not the ultimate ahead of its time story, I don't know what is. Let's talk about its cult following. Over the years, The Thing has amassed a massive fan base that only continues to grow. What's fascinating is how it's become a touchstone for not just horror fans, but filmmakers too. Visionaries like Guillermo del Toro have cited it as a major influence, particularly for its practical effects and storytelling. James Wan has also spoken about how The Thing shaped his approach to building tension and crafting atmosphere in films like The Conjuring. It's a testament to how Carpenter's work has rippled through the genre, inspiring a whole new generation of creators. And let's not forget the iconic moments. I mean, come on, the blood test scene, that's pure cinematic gold. The tension Carpenter builds as each character's blood is tested is almost unbearable. And when the truth is revealed, and it's an explosion of terror and chaos. It's one of those scenes that sticks with you, cementing itself in the annals of horror history. Then there's the dog transformation scene, which is nightmare fuel. These moments aren't just scary, they're unforgettable. They've become part of our collective pop culture psyche, referenced and parodied in everything from South Park to other films. But what makes The Thing truly timeless is its themes. Paranoia, mistrust, and survival are universal concepts that resonate just as much today as they did in the 80s, maybe even more so. In a world where trust feels increasingly fragile, the idea of not knowing who or what you can rely on hits close to home. Carpenter tapped into something primal, something deeply unsettling about human nature and our fear of the unknown. And when you zoom out and look at The Thing within Carpenter's larger body of work, it feels like the culmination of everything he does best. It's got the tension of Halloween, the isolation of the fog, the unforgettable visuals of Escape from New York. It's Carpenter firing on all cylinders, blending his signature elements into a film that feels both singular and emblematic of his genius. This legacy is why The Thing matters so much. It's not just a great horror film, it's a piece of cinema that continues to inspire, terrify, and resonate. If that's not a legacy worth celebrating, I don't know what is. So let's rewind again to 1982 for a moment. I know I've said this before, but it bears repeating. When The Thing hit theaters, it was a rough landing. Critics were brutal. One reviewer called it wretched excess. Another dismissed it as too gross and accused Carpenter of prioritizing the gore over substance. Ouch, right? Even Starlog magazine, which catered to sci-fi and horror fans, referred to it as a barf bag movie. And then there was the timing. As we mentioned, The Thing came out just a couple weeks after E.T. the Extraterrestrial. A warm, fuzzy alien movie. No, the alien's not fuzzy. The movie is warm and fuzzy. But it had audiences swooning. Compared to Spielberg's heartwarming tale, Carpenter's bleak, grotesque vision never stood a chance. And the box office barely made back the $15 million budget, earning a disappointing $19.6 million. To add insult to injury, Carpenter himself admitted that the poor reception shook him, even putting his career at risk. It's hard to believe now, but The Thing was a failure. And Carpenter moved on, his confidence a little bruised. But time is a funny thing, isn't it? Over the decades, The Thing underwent a complete transformation, not unlike its shape-shifting alien. Slowly but surely, critics and audiences began to reevaluate it. And what they found was a masterpiece. This film's layered storytelling, groundbreaking effects, and relentless tension became undeniable. It started showing up on best of lists, and not just for horror. Today, it's hailed as one of the greatest sci-fi and horror films ever made. Why the change of heart? Part of it is context. As the years passed, audiences and critics began to appreciate the artistry behind the practical effects. What was once dismissed as gross is now celebrated as technical marvel. Those grotesque transformations, they've aged like fine wine or maybe fermented alien goo. Then there are the themes. In the modern era, The Thing feels eerily prescient. A story about paranoia, mistrust, and fear of the unknown that hits differently in a world where misinformation runs rampant and trust feels like a scarce resource. Carpenter's exploration of these ideas has only grown more relevant, making the film resonate with each new generation. And let's not overlook the fans. The cult following for The Thing has been instrumental in its reevaluation. Horror conventions, retrospectives, and endless online discussions have kept the film alive, pushing it into the spotlight where it always belonged. It's not just a movie anymore. It is a cultural touchstone. Today, it's hard to imagine The Thing being anything less than a masterpiece. It's studied in film schools, dissected in essays, and celebrated by filmmakers as a benchmark in horror and sci-fi. That's the beauty of hindsight. It allows us to see the brilliance that wasn't always obvious at first glance. So from too gross to too good to ignore, The Thing has come full circle. And honestly, isn't that the best kind of redemption story? Okay, let's dive into one of The Thing's most unforgettable moments. I mentioned it earlier, the blood test scene. If you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you haven't seen the movie, stop what you're doing, pause this right here, go watch this movie. It is amazing. It's a masterclass in tension, paranoia, and sheer edge-of-your-seat horror. So here's the setup. MacReady, our rugged and increasingly desperate leader, has a theory. If the alien organism reacts differently to protect itself, then testing everyone's blood with a hot wire should expose who's human and who's not. Simple, right? But the execution? Absolutely nerve-wracking. The scene is quiet, save for the occasional muttered dialogue and the unnerving sound of the wire sizzling in the blood samples. Carpenter stretches the tension like a rubber band, making you feel every second of the crew's fear and distrust. Each person tied to a chair is on the verge of snapping, and so are we. Who's infected? Who can you trust? And just when you think you've got it all figured out, bam, the blood reacts, the chaos erupts. It's a textbook example of how to keep an audience guessing and then hit them with a gut punch they didn't see coming. But beyond the thrills, this scene is a perfect microcosm of the film's larger themes. The blood test isn't just about uncovering the monster. It's about the fragile bonds of trust and the lengths we'll go to when paranoia takes over. The moment someone's blood doesn't react, you can see the mix of relief and guilt on the survivors' faces. They were ready to accuse, to condemn, to burn one of their own alive if necessary. It's a chilling reminder of how easily fear can fracture even the strongest alliances. And that's what sets the thing apart from so many other horror films. Most movies give us a clear villain, a singular, visible threat that we can rally against. But Carpenter flips the script. The monster here isn't always something you can see or fight directly. It's the fear that the person next to you might not be who they say they are. It's the doubt that creeps in when survival's on the line. The ambiguity is what keeps us hooked. Even after the film ends, you're left questioning, what would you do in that situation? How far would you go to survive? And let's not forget the practical effects in this scene either. Rob Bottin's work shines here. Well, shines might not be the right word when you're dealing with grotesque shape-shifting gore, but you get my drift. The blood's reaction, the sudden transformation, it's horrifying in the best possible way. It doesn't feel like a cheap jump scare. It feels earned, like Carpenter has been building to this moment all the way from the beginning. And speaking of earned moments, the thing doesn't handhold its audience. It respects our intelligence. We're piecing together the mystery right alongside the characters, and just when we think we've got it figured out, Carpenter throws another curveball. That's why this movie will stay with you. It's not just scary, it's smart, it's layered, and it challenges us to look deeper. So yeah, the blood test scene, it's not just a standout moment in the movie. It's a standout moment in horror history, and it encapsulates everything that makes this film perfect. The tension, the paranoia, the effects, and Carpenter's fearless approach to storytelling. It's horror at its most refined and at its most gut-wrenching. So as we close out this deep dive, let me say it loud and clear. The Thing is a masterpiece, an easy 10 out of 10 in my book. This is my favorite John Carpenter film. Halloween is a close second, but this is number one. This film is the kind of experience that reminds me why horror is such a powerful genre. It's not just about scares, though there are plenty of those. It's about the way it crawls under my skin and makes me question everything. Trust, humanity, survival, and even my own instincts. Carpenter delivers a perfect storm of filmmaking here. The technical brilliance of the special effects, the haunting simplicity of the score, and a cast that brings every ounce of tension and paranoia to life. Kurt Russell, Keith David are iconic. The rest of the ensemble cast also makes this world feel authentic and the stakes so real. The themes are timeless. In a world that often feels divided and suspicious, the paranoia and isolation hit harder than ever. It's a horror movie, yes, but it's also a psychological thriller and a character study wrapped up in one terrifying package. Whether you're a die-hard Carpenter fan, a horror aficionado, or just beginning to get into the genre, this is another must-watch. It's as if it's been a while since you've seen it. It'll just blow your mind. It's worth the rewatch. There's always something new to appreciate, something new to terrify you, or something to terrify you all over again. Now, the next episode, we're kicking off phase 2 of our Carpenter retrospective with Escape from New York. Carpenter shifts gears from icy horror to gritty dystopian action. And trust me, this is a ride that you won't want to miss. So subscribe, share the podcast with your fellow horror lovers, and let's keep this journey about Carpenter going. And that's it for today's episode of Real Talk Horror. Thank you for joining me. Again, if you joined the episode if you enjoyed this episode, and I truly hope that you did, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast. It really helps reach more horror fans and keeps the conversation going with this amazing community. And hey, I want to hear from you also. Follow me on Instagram and Threads at Real Talk and let me know your thoughts. Is The Thing your favorite Carpenter film? What's your take on the ending? Or just tell me what other horror classics you'd like us to cover down the road. Until next time, stay creepy, stay curious, and get ready, because phase 2 is coming, and we're starting with a bang. See you soon.